and welcome to Movie of the Year, the only podcast on the internet that has the science and the screaming to determine what is the single greatest movie of any given year. We are continuing our deep delve into 2020, making us basically the opposite of everyone on the planet. As everybody tries to run away from the year, we go deeper in. Tonight's a very special episode to me because at one point I said tonight's movie is one of my favorites of the year. So that's pretty crazy. Returning is our champion from last week. It's the late, great Kate.
This show is obsessed with me.
I hate this.
You guys can't get enough, dude.
We did this to ourselves. We signed up for this.
Much like in Universal's Dark Universe, we have created a monster, and now we have to deal with it.
Russell Crowe.
It cost us $150 million.
Yeah.
Kate, just for winning last week, how many points do you deserve right now?
Oh, I think between that and literally being like a pop star to you guys, I think I should start with 7.
7 points. Let's do one.
She aimed high, man.
Greg is also here.
respect it.
Is this pop star energy making you nervous about tonight's game?
No, well, it doesn't feel exact. The first cow episode doesn't feel like whoever's going to come in and razzle dazzle you is the one that's going to do it, right? You want something kind of sweet, slow, right? Maybe something a little bit boring. Well, have I ever got the guy for you?
Oh, this is a Greg show. Up and
That's
down.
right. It's me, Greg.
Here
Greg
to
the
challenge
first
both
cow.
Kate at her pop stardom and Greg at his slowness is Mike.
I have a little mix of both of those things. I'm very excited to, at the end of this show, dig out the fucking corpses that will be my competition. Just like the start of First Cow.
Ryan. That's for me. Because I'm gonna have to help you bury those. It's just it's part of
I'm
friendship.
gonna be honest. I think Mike deserved a point for that one. That one made me laugh hard enough.
Greg.
Yeah.
Kate, please don't try to help me.
No comment.
Ladies and gentlemen, we
I
are
got
here
nothing to say.
to discuss First Cow, and we are gonna dive hardcore into this cow, like a reverse version of that scene where Ace Ventura came out of a hippo. Or a rhino.
Was it rhino?
We're
Believe
gonna
it was
do-
a rhino, Ryan. Believe it was a
It
rhino.
was Rhino.
But you can see why he got it confused. It's not like you saw its face.
You don't know the difference between a hippo butthole and a rhino butthole?
That's not where I was looking, sister.
This is exactly what Kelly Reichardt intended when she wanted podcasts about her movie. Before we dive in, reverse Ace Ventura style, to that hippo rhino cow butthole, I do, and we're going to start with Greg. Is this a good movie?
This is a good movie.
I have to say, it is a challenging movie. It starts off with a 10-minute shot of a boat, which appears to be traveling at 2 miles an hour. But that kind of puts you on notice. But there is a really understated power to all the shots in this movie that even though they're slow, they're not boring. And the shots don't seem hyper composed, but they obviously are, because the second you see one, you're like, holy shit, that's a really great shot. And so you're motivated by that. But it does go a little slowish at times.
You know that thing where like academics write in the way that they do, so it'll push out the plebes and they won't even read it because they don't understand, which is a douchebag move. But I can see how you're right. In fact, Greg, where
I can hear how I'm right.
maybe people will turn this movie off, not in a fuck you, go fuck yourself way, but like this isn't the movie for you if you can't watch a boat go.
I think I think that opening shot is, like if you make it through that shot, then it's like, okay, cool, you're ready for the movie. But honestly, if you don't like that shot, you should think about like scooching on down to another movie. Right? Maybe in the same format. Maybe in Justice League style.
A lot of 4-3 on the
A lot of
screen.
4-3, right?
It was a weird week for that. Mike, is this a better 4-3 movie than Zack Snyder's Justice League?
It is an infinitely better 4-3 movie, and that's all I'll be talking about is the ratio. I think this is my second Kelly Reichardt film. And I have seen the trailer Wendy and Lucy 1,000 times. But I haven't made that jump. But I think what Kelly does so well is take mumblecore vibes and put talent on top of it as a filmmaker, and that's impressive that she thought to do that.
Yeah.
And because most of them didn't.
And I think that the whole mumblecore thing is like, well, we don't need to make great. We don't have to have great filmmaking because we're getting in depth of the characters, and she's able to do both, right, Kate? What do you think of First Cow?
I hear what you say. Like, it is the first 10 minutes. I've watched it a couple times, and I find it very frustrating every time. I think it is a good test if you can handle the pacing of the film. But seeing, like, maybe Funke at the very top with her dog, my instinct was like, oh, this is an A24 film, so this is going to be an Ari Aster, this is going to be a Max Eggers, this is going to be a man who is asking me to watch long shots of boats and say, you figure it out, honey. I don't need to. I saw
bet
the
you
picture.
can't, but I want you to try.
Yeah, go ahead and try to decipher what it is I'm about to make you suffer. And very slowly but surely, the narrative took over, and it became one of the sweetest movies I've ever seen. I really like watching it. I think it's very.
Is there
sweet.
a movie you would rather give a hug to than this movie?
Oh my god, it's so.
I want to squeeze it.
Other than
Get
Fast
in
and
here,
Furious
movie.
presents Hobbs and Shaw? No, Greg, I think this is the one.
I'm sorry. Apparently, you guys haven't seen Lady and the Tramp 2: Scamp's Adventure.
Oh my god.
Have not, will not.
All right. We have a limit on how many times Kate can say Scamp's Adventure on this episode, so we're going to get out of this intro segment and dive directly into the movie Lady and the Tramp 2: Scamp's Adventure.
Well, that is very, very funny. Or very sad, and perhaps now you have something to think about. Or very problematic, and perhaps we have something to think about. But in any event, I'm sure you have some reaction to what you're listening to. So why not check us out on the social media? You can go to Instagram or Twitter and find us at YourPopFilter. Email contacts@YourPopFilter. Hey, everybody, keep watching them movies.
One of, if not the first movie victims of the pandemic, was Kelly Reichardt's First Cow. Not that any Reichert movie is ever going to be a blockbuster, but this is one of the first movies that got put in theaters only to be yanked immediately, thanks to the pandemic. Thanks, pandemic. It's also one of the big titular controversies of 2020. Outside of the emancipation of one Harley Quinn, people could not believe that someone would make a movie called First Cow. The film tells the story of two less than manly men, tangentially involved in the gold rush of the early 1800s. One a cook named Cookie, who was trying to make a living feeding the manly men of the time, all of which looked like they would storm the United States Capitol, and King Lu, a Chinese guy who was trying to make a life for himself despite the rampant racism against Chinese people that I'm sure would no longer exist in the coming years.
Absolutely never.
The two become a jobswaz with oily cakes, an almost magical sweet biscuit that sends you through delicious bits of nostalgia when you eat them. But the only way they can make these oily cakes is by milking First Cow, a cow brought over by rich people into the new world. Taste buds, I ask you this. The primary adjective that comes to mind for this movie is tender. How did Reichert manage to convey such tenderness while maintaining the ugliness and harshness contextualizing the narrative? How does her filmmaking find sweetness in such miserable circumstances? And I do want you guys to keep in mind that we are going to get to Lou and Cookie later. So let's just sort of talk about the pacing and the camera. How did Kelly make this tender thing out of like the least tender thing possible?
Because I think tenderness is not a quick, lightning emotion. It does need to be like slowly fermented. And so by letting us sit there and have the river waft over us, it is not a roaring river, my friends. It is like a gently babbling brook, and the way the sunlight hits the leaves, it really all does feel like a kid's daydream.
If there was a First Cow version of Rivers, it would be this one.
Yes.
Mike.
But and I think also there's you see the like Cookie, the way he interacts with the environment is tender. I mean, the first shots we get of him are like this way he's harvesting these mushrooms, which seems to be like such an act of care. Almost like a maternal act. And it's interesting that it's mushrooms because like we've just seen his dead body, and then like sort of like the mushrooms like bring us back to him as a living creature, which mushrooms interact with like dead beings in that way. But the way he like it is so loving even to the earth. I don't know. Part of what's so effective about this movie is it makes you feel things. and then it doesn't have a roadmap that shows you exactly how it did that. Like, just like rewinding the clock just 1 week to Promising Young Woman. I love that movie, obviously, but like the shots are hyper composed and you can see how they're composed. In this movie, you feel the hand of a very competent director, but you can't exactly point to what it is that's making you feel things. And that's like mind blowing, really, because I'm used to movies being kind of open, you know, like, here's what I'm doing, by the way. And this one doesn't do that. It just manages to do it behind the scenes.
Okay, so like, yeah, you can't feel her hand for most of the time, but now that we've watched it, Kate, what do you think that she is specifically doing that when you look back on it now is like, oh, first cow?
I think it can be distilled into, I think, if not the binary, a binary, in terms of relationships, human relationships. I think that there is intimacy and there is eroticism. There's, you know, the energy that is created between the charge of two different people, and there is the, you know, comfort that is generated through like truly knowing another person. And and intimacy takes time. I think a lot of cinema is very erotic, whether it's like male gazy or if it has to do with the drama between like the action hero's desire and you know, the literal explosion you're watching. Like, most of cinema, in order to create a kind of a compelling narrative, requires kind of an erotic tone, and everything about this movie is intimate. And so it's slow and it's kind, and it lets you get to know the people involved in a way that feels very real. That doesn't feel like, oh, spark. It feels like, oh, this is how you build friendship. This is how you show kindness. And that's something that's temporal, I think, inherently.
Part of it is as simple as like long, continuous shots. If you watch an actor blocking for a long time, if you watch them creating action for a really long time, it is intimate because you are looking at them unfiltered, unbroken for a really long time. And if you have actors who are comfortable in that environment, that builds up a tremendous amount of intimacy, just that act.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I've noticed that like people who watch this movie and didn't get on its page are like, oh, she wanted to make something that everyone loves, so she made it slow and boring because like that's what like Kubrick or Malick would do, and it sucks and I don't like watching it. But if you do get on its page, you do sort of start to realize, like what Kate said, and that the feelings that we have towards this movie would be impossible if it didn't take that amount of time, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think the best advice given, and really we should treat like every movie like this, though I don't know if Hobbs and Shaw would have the same responses. Before I watched it, Ryan told me to put my phone in another room and just let what happens. And then, because if there's distractions, you're never going to get on its page.
And you might think that like, I want to give you a point, Mike, for bringing up advice that I gave you. Like when you're watching the movie, you might think like, well, I know an app that is going to allow me to still pay attention to the movie, so this will be fine. Like, no, like you really have to sit in that slow ass first cow river. If
your mood is like, I want the plot of this film, don't watch this movie. Get in a different, like, you need to fuck plot, right?
Yeah. This is a movie about tone, which relationships are, you know, like legitimately, like, you know, that is something that it transcends cinema. And I think that when we talk about time, which, you know, to be a film nerd, like, is the conversation around movies, is how space and time interact with each other, and how that's like the most human thing that we can imagine. Like when this movie started and it was very slow, and it's an A24 film, so it's like Ari Aster and Max Eggers, and like, who are you, film boy, to make me sit and watch? And I think The Lighthouse is a very interesting parallel in terms of like, that's a movie that's agonizingly slow quite often, that takes its time. But that's a movie about eroticism. That's a movie about difference and the energy and like kineticism that comes from tension versus the slow realization of love, which is so much less exciting in reality. You know,
sometimes The Lighthouse is first cow slow, and sometimes it is Zack Snyder's Justice League fast. And Lighthouse is a fucking crazy movie.
The crazy thing about it, though, is it's less exciting from the outside, and that's what we always get, right? The exterior version in movies. And the inside, it's like the most electric, like amazing thing, and it always has been, even in a time before Doritos and the Max Snyders of the world, right? Where it was still the most vivid experience in a world where experience wasn't quite as vivid as maybe
Max Snyder, the Doritos of directors.
the Dorito King. But
Messer Dorito.
Most critics will defend the pacing, right? Because it is lovely, and then also you don't want to sound like an idiot.
yeah, what if you sound dumb? Oh my god,
You never want to sound dumb.
Critics'
But that's
biggest
seriously,
fear.
no, as a person who watches movies frequently, specifically to talk about them, I have earned the right to say movies should not be longer than 90 minutes. I had to sit down and watch Dances with Wolves 2 nights ago, 4 fucking hours. I'll tell you now, Kevin Costner didn't earn it.
How
like
long
a
was
slow-
Kevin Costner's initial scream in Dances with Wolves? Did
His
that scream
initial
go on for 10
scene-
minutes?
His initial scene is literally him riding not once, but twice in front of like a line of fire and surviving godlike. It is so indulgent and rude. And then and then at the 10-minute mark, we begin a very bland narration. So this is a movie completely lacking self-awareness of its protagonist, which I would say First Cow is very different.
I think Dances with Wolves is. I still think it's an okay movie, but I like that I word, especially in the week that we're recording this is when Zack Snyder's Justice League came out, and there's no way, even if you can't stand the pace of this movie, there's no way that you can call it indulgent. You can't be like, well, Riker's just like fucking jerking off all over us.
No.
Her co-writer for this is somebody that she's worked with a lot before, and it's also based on their story that they wrote, and I bring that up. I don't know if the bookend of this movie is in the book, but typically when there's a framing device like in this movie, it's because it was in the book. That's something that some critics have jumped on and said, "What the fuck? Maybe Fianke, get the fuck out of here."
I've been thinking about this a lot because, like, why? There has to be a reason, and somebody as thoughtful and methodical as Reichardt, there needs to be a reason. What that opening does of Alia Shawkat and finding the corpses is a slow, tender movie, but with that, now we have a time bomb. And this kind of movie normally doesn't have. I think it's genius to put a time bomb in this movie, because even when they're having sweet moments and he's whispering sweet nothings into the cow's ears, you're like, but I know how it ends, which means they're in the least tense movie ever made. There somehow is this slowly ratcheting up tension because I know they become corpses.
Well, I don't think it's the least tense. Like, there's multiple times where they have to sleep in the woods overnight. And
it's a pretty tenty movie.
They do camp, but the whole ending is like an action-filled scene.
Yeah.
And then us knowing, but I do think I would say that the average viewer, which is what I'm saying I am, so I'm just assuming that everybody else, that you do sort of forget about that first framing device when you're watching it, and then when they die together, you're like, oh yeah.
And I do think it's very useful, though, because I think part of what the movie is about is that, the places that we walk, like the Earth, is full of this like experience, and that we are on it for like such a short time, but that it is kind of timeless. Like you see the Earth and the river and the trees from modern times, and they don't look any different than the back in the day stuff, and yet like our petty dramas have like risen and fallen in that time. And so it's like, it's the ultimate contextualizing device, which is there was no world in which these men were so successful in their relationship with each other that like they were alive 200 years later, right? So like it's all kind of like, sound and fury signifying nothing, but like when you see their moments, like you do see the beauty, and that's what the movie says, like, stop and appreciate the experience and the beauty that exists right now. And the beginning of the movie sort of like serves as like a memento mori, like, time is fleeting.
I agree. Well, this is going to go right into our next segment, but as a lack of a strong hand, a forceful hand that Riker always has, of like she always wants you to experience and she doesn't want to force how you think and feel about the movies. I think having that framing device there is sort of like, I mean, we're still in the same country. Like, like these people were around, and like we have evidence here.
Also, I think I noticed something watching this time. Cookie wears like he gets away with wearing this shade of really faded like suede that to me reads as like pink. And so in a way he almost gets away with wearing pink everywhere he goes, because honestly if they noticed they would have said something like his fancy fucking boots and
or murdered him.
The like Alia Shawkat, her character is wearing the same sort of like pink neckerchief when she finds him. And so they're linked, you know, and, I started
she's harvesting mushrooms as well.
I think
Like
the first thing that this film offers is a William Blake quote. The bird a nest, the spider a web, man friendship. So this is a story.
The first time I watched it, it was just something that I ignored. You know, I was like,
but
all right, continue.
Let's get to the movie.
It speaks to one, the romanticism and like tenderness inherent to like literature of the turn of the 19th century, which is just worth talking about. It's one about nature. It's one about relationships. It's a movement that is about, again, like intimacy. And I think that quote reminds you that like, yes, people die, like ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But at the end of the day, the stories of all of our lives since the beginning of humanity has been one of friendship, of the search of it. And the meaning of it.
And the movie does tell us that they were friends, but were they? I'm not sure, because they never did together in Oscar Draft. When we come back, let's see what happened with that.
Hola, Filterinos. I just wanted to interrupt real briefly and say thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. If you want to support us a little more directly, you can go to patreon.com/yourpopfilter. There, depending on what tier you pick, $1 a month, $5 a month. If you're crazy, anything more than $5 a month, don't do that. You can get extra content. There's extra shows, extra series, behind-the-scenes stuff. You could pay for Ryan to draw you a picture. I can write you a poem. You can get the shirts off our very own backs. All of that and so much more over at patreon.com/yourpopfilter. While you're on the internet, you should check out Shady Monk. He does all the tunes you've been listening to. He's on Bandcamp, he's on Spotify, SoundCloud, wherever kids get their music these days that I'm too old to know. Shady Monk lives there. You can probably follow him on Twitter and Instagram as well. That's Shady Monk. Wherever you get music, check him out.
Every year, we here at Pop Filter Studios like to do a show where we try to guess which movies will get the most Oscar nominations. We do it draft style, which is only weird because it's not a bracket. Typically, everything we do is a bracket, but the other part of everything we do is a draft. It was Kate versus Mike versus me versus Greg. Before we start, do we have any predictions? If you did not run the numbers yet, do we have any predictions?
I'd guess Ryan is first.
I think, I would say
I'd guess myself third.
Ryan is first. I think I came in last.
Yeah,
I think
Mike's
swept this
second.
whole thing.
I'm third.
Yeah. I would say
I don't remember what I
Okay.
picked.
Yeah, that's the other thing. I don't quite remember what I picked. I remember I saw Mank got a bunch,
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, good. Wait, is it?"
It's worth saying that the only person who took a screenshot of the results and texted it to the other group was Ryan. So I think
Ryan's
that kind
probably
of
the winner.
I thought those were private texts. So what I sent was that I drafted Mulan, and I got you guys made fun of me a lot, and it got 2 nominations. Let's start with Greg.
Why not?
Greg drafted First Cow, The Assistant, and Never, Rarely, Sometimes, Always. 3 absolutely incredible movies by 3 female filmmakers.
Oh, he's going for that woke award.
Honestly, I've been thinking about it. I love female filmmakers. That's
You're very brave to say
no.
Greg, it's because you're such a beautiful, kind
Remember how
soul.
jazzed
Like
I got
my
about
Uncle Dino.
Farewell?
He also drafted Pretty Young Woman, and that's directed by a female, but that movie did what the
A
other 3
female?
didn't, which is get nominations. So Greg had 3
Oh my
goose
gosh,
eggs on
that's
his
the
team.
worst I've ever done.
Pretty Young Woman got 5 nominees, and
That's
the other
problem
one
with liking women, Greg. It's fundamentally an uphill battle.
his other choice was directed by a man, but it's Soul, which is something that Greg has, and it's Pretty. So it's 8 nominees for Greg.
Gosh,
8 nominations.
I think that's the worst anybody's ever done. Yikes. Well, what can I say, everybody, except for maybe you shouldn't listen to my opinions on this show.
Only if you care about awards. I'll defend Greg to my
Let's hear
friend
Greg
Greg.
had.
The story
Greg
of these
loves every time someone says
I
Greg.
do love it. Anytime anybody does any of my bits back to me, I'm like, that's
Yeah. That's
I wrote
right.
that.
Greg.
the story of these nominations was how many sixes did you get? Because Mank, which I took with the third overall pick, which means Kate and Mike could have taken Mank and didn't, got 10. But there was a ton of sixes. So how many of those sixes did you get? Mike, you got Nomadland, Minari, and Judas and the Black Messiah, each getting 6.
Yeah, man. Also, those are good-ass movies.
Good sound.
And
Big man. Good Foley.
Also, Mike, very diverse group. This is clearly the Oscars showing, hey, it doesn't just have to be white people all the time. Nomadland has an Asian director, Minari, Asian all around, and Judas and the Black Messiah.
Choose the Black Messiah.
The Five Bloods, however, Mike, was what you tried to keep your streak going.
Yeah.
1 nomination for score.
That is, don't remember the score that much. It's I forgot because I was like, well, Spike Lee, that's a clincher, forgetting that the Oscars famously don't like what Spike Lee has to say.
Well, I thought after Black Klansman that he was just in that.
I
Like,
thought
he could be
exactly.
on that
Part of the
Meryl Streep
club.
level, you know?
In the club,
No
50
director,
Cent.
no picture, and no Delroy Lindo.
How?
That's insane.
I thought they were going to like see what happened with the Golden Globes and be like, okay, we're not going to make the same mistake.
You know something that I think film critics haven't said yet about the Oscar noms that is worth it? That fundamentally it's rude. It's rude how they
Yeah.
did it. I don't like... I think it was rude. I think that there were people who deserved it and past anything else. Fundamentally, socially inept.
And it's so weird the way we all agree that they're totally wrong always in both nomination and winners. And yet we all still...
And yet still give a
every
shit.
single year we're like... They're like, why do we... Obviously, yeah, they fuck it up. They always fuck it up. But so then why do we keep coming back as dummies and being like, they hurt my feelings again?
I'm sorry, have you ever met a popular kid?
No.
I'm sorry, have you hung out with
I
Ryan?
scurry away from popular kids.
I mean, the reason that we care is because we now have the number one system
That's
of awarding
true.
films, and so we have to pay attention to our competition. But we know that they're
They're very bad at their jobs.
Mike, you also had a goose egg. It was Palm Springs.
Yeah,
Prayer shot at the end.
I was thinking it's a screenplay, but fuck them.
You had 19 nominations because you got 3 of those
Damn,
sixes,
Greg.
and then to 5.
How's that
Blood
dust
Tiger.
Yeah,
taste?
that's more than a double, Greg.
But to be in a shot for winning, you need like high
Yeah.
30s, so I'm fucked.
Kate, you had 2 sixes. You had The Trial of Chicago 7 and Sound of Metal. I would say that, I think Predictor said, Sound of Metal was, 3 or maybe 4?
Yeah.
6 is crazy.
Nah, Sound of
Again, back
Metal
to our
is my favorite
podcast,
movie of
it's us
2020.
pimping Paul Racy, which is why
Yeah,
it got so
dude.
many nominations.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
One of the forgotten movies by most people, but not by UK, it was News of the World, who got 4 nominations.
Yeah.
And then Tenet got 2.
Okay.
Soundies.
And then Ammonite got 0.
Okay. That's fair.
So you
Because
had
it turns
18.
out it isn't like eating a sandwich. She was right.
And I think that's what all the voters wrote at the bottom of their
What if
ballots.
during the
Yeah,
Oscars
in
they
the
cut
end.
to Kate Winslet and she's eating a sandwich?
And
And
just
she's, just like her tongue is deep inside that sandwich.
That's how I eat my sandwiches.
trying to suck the mustard out.
And then just throw away the bread like it's the cookie part of Oreos.
how I
So,
handle-
Kate, you got 18.
Shut it down. Yeah?
Should I have let that sentence
No, she
finish?
very
Nah,
efficiently. She just changed
For
gears.
sure not.
One less than Mike.
Okay.
No! I knew
I mean, that's
Mike
what you
got
said.
second
Worse.
place, yeah.
That was your
I
prediction.
know. But I was hoping I was being brutal towards myself.
Yeah.
I think that all of my movies got fewer nominations than I thought they would.
God.
I thought, only 10
Yeah,
for
fuck
Mank.
off.
I thought that was 14 or 15. Ma Rainey getting 5 is fine. Ma Rainey and One Night in Miami on my team got 5 and 3, but no Best Picture.
Mm.
Is
Only
it
we're
because
rated.
that they are filmed plays, or is there some other reason that Ma Rainey and One Night in Miami were not nominated? The Father got 6.
Yeah,
That was my
rude.
6.
Again, rude.
And then pulling it out for me right at the end was Mulan with 2.
Mulan. More like it.
Nailed it.
Thanks.
More like
Thanks.
Mulan. Remember Weigers?
I didn't hit
'Cause I do.
30s. I got 26, just a scant 7 more than Mike in second place.
Oh, that. So you won, Ryan, but does it hurt that this is the smallest win you've ever had?
Ryan.
Greg.
Yeah, it clearly
can't get
hurts
points
that,
for that.
much. It hurts enough to do an extra 2.
Greg gets points.
Greg.
Just thanks for not talking shit, Greg. Do you want to go ahead
Honestly,
and talk
I
shit?
feel like this is like this is how it goes every year. You've earned it. You always win. It's
Classic Greg relying on his likability.
Just show that belly, Greg.
what can I
But
say?
no,
I'm the
I
guy
also
that got 8. It's obviously it is so weird. I am the weirdest mix of not competitive
Yeah.
and not good at
He's
anything.
the first
and
belly up.
then yet it hurts my feelings when I don't perform well. Well, of course you don't perform well. You're not competitive and you suck at shit. Like,
When you're that soft, you're legitimately a grub. There ain't no
From your
underside,
first
honey.
dying breath
Every
to your
side
last
is an
dying day.
underside.
I do agree with Greg, though, because essentially what he is saying is that instead of paying attention to this shit all year, I watch sports and think about my family and my relationship with my wife, and that's why I win, is because I don't do any of that stuff. So, good for me. When we come back, more First Cow. No more Oscars. First Cow got 0 nominations, so fuck the Oscars. Let's get back to First Cow. Is there an argument to be made that First Cow isn't just the story of 2 guys, a cow in an oily cake place, but can also be looked at as the story of America itself? What and how is Reichert trying to tell us about our past and our present?
I mean, yes, because it plays with capitalism. It plays with like the allure and lie of the new frontier and how it's different. But then King is like, no, you're pretending like these beavers will last forever. I'm telling you, before you guys showed up, there were even more. You're going to ruin this place like you've ruined every other part of this country.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, isn't King Lu, as far as our 2 main characters go, the one who is most enticed in...
Yeah. But
I mean,
But I think that's very American, is to be able to point out what's wrong with it while fully participating and hungering after.
Damn.
well, I think that there's a difference between his like idea of being an entrepreneur and like having some capitalist dream versus the like extreme everything is mine of what is it, Chief Factor? Great
The
name.
Chief Factor.
Little
Little Toby.
Chief Factor. But I think that it's like he has that if there's a beautiful part of the American spirit that says I will I'll have my own claim, I'll have something that's mine, sort of the of mice and men, our own little plot of land with the rabbits. I think there is something beautiful about that, and he exemplifies that. But there is also the more odious, terrible form of capitalism. But I think it does try to like embrace all of America by sort of bringing that under the umbrella as well.
But isn't it all in King Lu? Because he has that beautiful dream and let's get a hotel, and he's the planning and he's ambitious. But then he's also like, but let's steal from that guy to get it, right? Because why not?
Well, King Lu he's the outsider who understands the system better than any of them, who understands what it is, that it's fundamentally exploitation that's happening out there.
That it always starts with a crime.
Which is the capitalist dream. There are the men who are willing to risk everything, who push the boundaries and work hard, and there are the men who come in with capital, which King Lu says at a certain point. He's like, how do you get rich without being rich? And in fact, the cow itself is like a cow of pedigree. The cow has been from, is from Brittany and stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's a question
and it's fucking
of like,
beautiful.
and it's beautiful. She's a
It's a
beautiful
hot-ass cow.
Well, she's got the prettiest eyes. Oh my
No,
god.
some cows have such pretty eyes. It's
Yeah.
true. It's true. And the rich Englishman who's ashamed of the thing that he claims to purport. It's such the people who are striving and the people who have are completely separated from each other, and the people who have, they believe less in the dream and benefit from it more. And it's
I also
such a
think
cruel
there's, like,
situation.
There's a thing going on too where it's a little bit of assimilation where Cookie is already white, and although he fears for his life at his job, like if he doesn't feed these hooligans, then they straight up saying like, oh, I'll just eat your fucking finger. But King Lu is always going to be Chinese.
Right.
And
Yeah.
part of the assimilation is, okay, so if I can't change my face or my name to be American, then what I'll do is I'm just going to pick up the most American way of living, you know?
And you can see that struggle in King Lu during the, is it major factor? Is that what we're saying when his visit?
Chief factor.
Interesting. So chief factor, when King Lu speaks up, with sincere intelligence, with understanding of what's going on, and with confidence, it is inherently affronting to him, and that is what sparks his distrust of those two immediately. Right.
This is some Reichert motherfucking shit. Instead of having the narrator go, and that's when I knew they didn't like me because I was Chinese. He speaks up and says something like very smart. He's a good business guy. Like he's got good ideas, and it cuts back to what's his name, Mike? Toby Toberson, and then like the general who's staying with him, and they're like they have to like put a handkerchief to their mouth. They're so affronted by his voice coming out in his house.
And for a second, you're like, "Oh, is it because they're lesser?" But then they respond to Cookie immediately, and you go, "Nope, this is for racism."
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that Oregon is a place with a terrible racial past. And this movie doesn't do a lot with it. In fact, there's only one black character that I can remember, and it's just someone shot in passing. But Oregon was like a very early on. It was like supposed to be like sort of like a white paradise, free from other races. So that's not like talked about a ton in the movie, but you can feel it in the way that non-white characters are treated, and the fact that there's like so few of them.
Well, I don't think there are so few of them. I think that's one of the most notable things about this film is in something that is toying with the Western genre, having so many characters of color of all sorts and forms. They're never other than King Lu, the front and center of the narrative. They're never the concern of the community, but they're there. And I think that is a statement about America as much as anything else is.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Like if you have oily cakes to offer me, then I will say, oh, cool, thank you, here's my money. But any other way, like I'm going to make sure that you are othered, you know, like I'm going to make sure that
the only way you
gross.
can give me oily cakes is if you steal from a system of power that exists.
Right.
And will then punish you. It's
interesting because in Toby's house, there's Toby and the lieutenant, and then there's also Toddlecum, Asta's dad from Resident Alien, so superhero show movie of the year crossover, plays Native American chief, and so there's respect for him being there, but then he also purposely walks behind. Like he's somebody who he doesn't get a lot of screen time, but seems to know all social cues and how it works, and is trying to like weave and dodge to keep enough of his power as he can, because he seems to know that he'll be quote unquote allowed to have it by these whiteys if he doesn't like buck too hard.
Yeah, there's always somebody that's going to cozy up and learn what it takes to try to just get by, right?
So okay, so it's not just the rich people; it's also the hoolies that we talked about in the beginning. Let's compare. One of my favorite scenes in the movie is Cookie is out searching way too late at night. Man, he should be asleep. His dedication to his job and keeping his fingers from being eaten means that he runs into King Lu, and in a movie like this, directed by somebody other than Kelly Reichert, he kills King Lu. And instead, they stand there and they have a conversation, and he listens and he brings him back and he hides him. And Cookie knows that he's out of food. He knows the whole group's out of food, and then sees King Lu. This scene right here is as much commentary on capitalism as, you know, going to steal milk and stuff. You know, like what is Kelly doing with this scene right here?
Well, I think he sees the outsider status in somebody else. You know, like Cookie cannot hide, even though he is white, and that should give him some level of ability to hide. It's really hard the way, especially men police male behavior. When you stick out in any way, it's like found out very quickly and then constantly brought up. So like Cookie can't really blend in with people. He's not going to be able to escape that. And so when he sees somebody else who cannot blend in, I think that it's right away, you know, he obviously makes that connection. to
I mean,
him.
is that
not to be too socialist about it, but there's also just like the underlying truth, in my opinion. I'll risk it. I'll go on the line. That kind of the antidote to the brutality of capitalism is empathy.
Boo, burner.
I know.
She's bringing love. Get her.
and that's what it shows is that like under capitalism is a brutal system that requires you sacrificing your humanity in some way, and seeing an other and identifying with him enough to give like is as anti-capitalist as a story as I can think.
There's a scene where we see the group of the hooligans are walking in the very beginning, and one of them has decided to have a little bit of joy, which is so unmanly. He's going to play his little dong 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 dong.
Oh, I loved that. Yeah.
And he does it for about 15 seconds before somebody far manlier comes up and just punches him because what are you doing right now?
All fairness to the guy who punches him. That is the most annoying instrument in the world. It's atonal.
And there's something to be said about the fact that they are starving, they are miserable, they have been fur trapping.
And that's the instrument that you pulled out.
And that's the instrument. You pulled out the most, quote, interesting, and by that I mean grating and insufferable instrument. At the same time, it is art. So I do see the point you're making, Ryan.
Even more than alto sax, wouldn't that have been the worst instrument?
Well,
God, it's such a terrible sound.
Good smooth jazz.
I think a mouth
smooth
harp
jab, if you will.
only really sounds good to the person playing it.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it's like the
a drum
most
set.
rude instrument. And there were like almost no instruments in the Wild West. Hence, there will be no instruments at the Wild West. So, like, it's this or the guy who is, I think, torturing a fiddle. I think, like, he's got, back in camp, there's a guy who's got a violin that obviously did something to him. And he is absolutely trying to get some information out of it or something. And just sawing on that bad boy so hard. There are no, there's so few nice things in this world, and the only guy who has the ability to get them, really, Chief Factor, only wants them so that he can deny them to other people.
Right.
Like, it reminds me of these like weird
Capitalism.
non-fungible tokens. Like, the only thing that confers value on something to people is the idea that you can have it and nobody else can. And that's why he really wants milk. He wants to be able to say to everybody else, you don't have anything nice and I have milk in my fucking tea.
I've been writing an article about that because I work for Christie's, the art house. And so they're trying to figure out how to monetize images that are digital exclusively and how to establish
people
luxury branding.
Brought
when
crypto to you?
everything about the internet is, like cryptocurrency and its relationship to high art right now is a conversation that is being had. That's a separate thing from this, but it's a seriously interesting thing that really reminds you that what is known as pleasure and luxury, what is turkey red versus canary yellow, like, is so fucking arbitrary by those in power who say this is of value enough for me to not give it to you.
I'm not totally sure what Kate's saying, but Mike made that like the poet's moan while she was
Started
poeticizing.
snapping.
I'm gonna give Kate the point. Guys, we have to take a break, but when we come back, the 5. That's right, folks. It's time for the 5. 2020. Where are our archetypes? We're gonna figure that shit out right now. The 3 of you fools are going to tell me, I'm going to give you guys archetypes, and you guys are going to throw out who is the 2020 version of that person. I think to make us feel better about 2020. What if it gave us no archetypes? Like, that would be terrible, right?
That would be awful, yeah.
All original? Boo.
This one part of life remained the same. We still got our archetypes.
Who's our Darth Vader of 2020?
Well, we will find the skeletons in the ground, as Aaliyah Shockett as we are, and we'll remember that there is still a Marilyn Monroe among us.
Don't you guys think that as much as you are you're also a little bit Aaliyah Shockett?
Me?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Or
I have this,
all of
like,
us?
All of us.
very
Yeah.
similar hair. We kind of have
Yeah.
the same freckles. There's a roundness of our face. that I
Greg,
think is
it's like
similar.
a halo right now. The side part's really doing you justice.
Boy, thank you, yeah. Look at me go.
Greg.
Yeah, he's
Yes.
pushing up his curls like he's in the 30s.
Before you give me your Marilyn Monroe, what do you need to have to be like a 2020 Marilyn Monroe?
I think you have to be kind of like a sex baby. And there has to be an intelligence behind that sex babiness
that we ignore as hard as we can.
Yeah. And then to help you, the person, ignore that and maybe feel more like the sex baby you're supposed to be, you have some sort of drug dependency that sort of like helps you attenuate just your natural brightness.
Shit, dude, are you gonna say me?
No, not for this one, Ryan.
Nah, I promise you, anyone who is either performing or listening to this podcast can relate.
All right, Greg, who is the 2020 Marilyn Monroe?
It's still Britney, bitch. In
Wait,
2020,
we're allowed to not be movies? Okay, that's good to know.
I hope so, because many of
Because it is
mine.
Britney, bitch.
Basically, you know, we talked about this a lot on the show, but like her dad's prisoner. So like basically, like if Marilyn Monroe had made it to the age that Britney Spears is, she would have been in some weird situation like this, where like some man is basically appointed by the state to like own her, and she's like, "Man, sure would love some freedom," and the state's like, "Oh, I don't know, honey." Well,
and even if he wasn't her father, she'd call him daddy.
Yeah, exactly. And then there seems to be like, you know, like there's some other layer of something going on there where it seems like she hasn't, you know, she's not fully present all the time, and there's just like a lot of pain, and you know, perhaps the specter of some sort of substance hanging out there. I don't know. But to me, it's definitely still all these years later, Britney Spears, because I think she was like our 2001 Marilyn Monroe.
Well, we have them a lot. We have them a lot.
We keep going through
beautiful things that we say we love, but that we destroy.
We're all bunnies. They're all bunnies.
They're all
the
bunnies.
correct answer to any question I ever ask is about Britney Spears. But Mike and Kate, why don't you play as well? Mike, you're up next.
Yeah, when I think of Marilyn, I think of somebody whose looks make the audience forget that she knows the system she's in and has to play it. And this is definitely the role specifically this year Amanda Seyfried was in. I think her role in Mank really staked her claim as the 2020 Marilyn Monroe, because think about all of Marilyn's characters. They're often like dumb, but then she talks a little more, and it's either they are not dumb and they're playing everybody around them, or they are the idiot savant who is supposed to be dumb in the movie but sees the truth of the heart of the matter. Actually,
it is the sexiest thing about her is her like final monologue in Gentlemen Prefer Blondes is like, no, you don't marry a woman because she's beautiful, but it certainly helps, right? That's what it's like to marry a rich man, sir. Like that is exactly like her. That is her strength. That is her strength, is her ability to be self-aware and also deeply vulnerable.
Yeah, and Amanda Seyfried does that. Thanks, Kate, for backing me up.
Got you, man.
Kate, what you got?
I mean, in a similar way, like that is how I feel. I think that is the crux of asking what is a Marilyn Monroe. It's someone who understands what is expected of their quote archetype, whether it's in a movie or within the story itself, and an underlying fragility that betrays a very real humanity. Also, bleach blonde, and for that reason, Riz Ahmed, bleach blonde hair. I think he's a perfect Marilyn Monroe this year.
Not just a wonderful body and a pretty face, but also
not just
a lot of depth
body,
there.
But also a lot of depth. Also a person trapped in many ways in his body. Think about it.
I thought, Kate, that because of the year that we're doing, that you were going to do the star of Promising Young Woman, Paris Hilton.
I have a lot to say. Well, also my answers are rooted. I thought we had to do actors within the 2020, but I'm coming up. I'm improvising with some other answers depending on how it go. So
that's
go
good.
Watch a master improviser at her craft.
Oh yeah, baby.
Well, you guys should probably do that because this is Greg all day. Britney Spears continues to be the Marilyn Monroe. Kate, let me ask you
she is
this.
an actress, by the way. It's called Crossroads. Okay, look it up.
It's incredible. Shonda Rhimes for screenplay.
Look
it up.
Wow, I did not know that.
Zoe Saldana, Pentuxy, or whatever it is from
Pencil
Orange is
Town.
Black. Yep.
Explain the James Dean archetype to me, and who was the 2020 James Dean?
Well, James Dean is a rebel without a cause. He's
an East of Eden.
Yeah, he's far east of Eden, and in that way, the lost child, right, of the Cain and Abel story. Yeah, I've read the Bible, I think all of the highlights, baby.
Fuck numbers in Deuteronomy, all right?
No, I'm not about it. I'm here for the narrative. Lots of great, genuinely life-changing narrative within that specific text. But what I will say is that
check it out, the Bible, you guys.
Yeah, dude, I don't know if you've checked it out, but it's got something to say.
Kate, our recommendation segment is a little bit later in the show.
I
Get
think
good
this
with
year's,
the Lord.
James Dean is one little Frances McDormand in Nomadland.
She's crazy.
I think
she's a wild person.
She's a wild
Not
person.
Frances, you. I'm saying you. Your picks are nuts.
No,
love
yeah,
it.
my
Keep
picks
going.
are nuts, but that's
going.
Mike, are you going to pick Kate as the James Dean of 2020?
This thing's going to get so meta and out of control. Greg picked the concept of togetherness.
No, please, I need to hear how Frances McDormand is our James Dean.
No, I don't know. I think there is a searching quality to both of them that is quite haunting. And I think there is the representation of an entire generation within their performances. And I think that there is incredible sympathy for pain that is depicted through the stories they constantly choose to tell. So how about that, Mike?
That's not bad, Mike.
Seems like some good reasons, Mike. Asked and answered.
And Mike, then you say something like, well, at least Frances McDormand kept her vehicle on the road at all times.
At least she was good at driving. Surprising. A lady?
Mike, who's the James Dean of 2020?
When I think of James Dean, I think of attractiveness, danger, a lot of soul, does a lot with a little.
Okay, hold
looks
on, let me get ready for this.
great in a wife beater. And
Loosen it up.
has already been mentioned on tonight's episode of The Five. It is one Riz Ahmed.
Yeah, baby.
I think James Dean, if they made like mature, thoughtful movies when he was alive, would have been in a Sound of Metal type movie.
I think that a lot of Riz Ahmed's performance in Sound of Metal is like, what? I don't know, man. Shut up. So I think that's a good.
That's just 'cause he couldn't hear,
beautiful
Ryan.
boy.
Yeah,
It's
he's like,
the
"Shut up, 'cause I
sensitive,
can't
beautiful
hear."
boy. Yeah.
Greg James Dean.
I think Kate hinted at it a little bit, which is that there is a gender fluidity to James Dean, even though he's like a beautiful boy, right? So kind of walks in between those worlds, which is why I think works for Frances McDormand, and also works for our current beautiful boy, Harry Styles. Harry Styles has been popularizing
So
that sort of like
Greg,
in a way
your
that James Dean
use of external references from cinema is blowing my mind. You're so good at it.
the way you did not follow the same set of rules that everybody else
Damn,
did.
man,
This is like when Nirvana did Unplugged, and then they just had electric instruments, and
You guys
people were
know
like,
we could use amps?
only Nirvana would think to go out there and just be like, Unplugged? No. This part's plugged.
I'm sorry. Have you heard of the punk movement? Greg hits have.
But Harry Styles, he's so like, I think they're good looking in the same way, and I think Harry Styles is just an evolution of this kind of like gender non-conforming character that's existed for really a long time, which is the boy that's like beloved by all the girls. So you would think that would make him hyper masculine, but he's kind of safe, and that safety in part is that he has a feminine energy that
It's the crush of a young woman.
Yeah,
That's something I noticed in my own crushes was that I liked them real girly when I was scared of men, and then the meaner they got.
The older you are, the meaner they get.
The older you are, the meaner they get.
Yeah, it's much the same with boys and girls, I think. Like, older you get, we're like,
Yeah, we just get mean in the end, and you
and
develop
seek it
a
in
taste.
others, like. I just want
It's
someone
like
to just tell me
alcohol.
I'm an asshole.
Yeah.
All great answers, but yeah, Mike. I'm gonna go with Riz Ahmed. I think that he's got the same sort of like not limited range, but doing a lot with a little.
It's shocking how arbitrary Ryan's choices are. It's infuriating.
It's not arbitrary. He's choosing the obvious way every
Thanks,
time.
Mike. Mike, here you go. Mike. Katharine Hepburn, Mike. What the fuck is that archetype?
Katharine Hepburn is brassy, takes control, bucks the system. If we're talking about gender fluidity, she wore pants.
She wore pants, Mike.
Slacks, you guys.
She wore goddamn
holy
pants.
Did it
shit.
well.
Couldn't
She did
really
it
tell,
well.
but redhead and her hair was a bit curly. I
And
think
Bryn Mawr.
She went to Bryn Mawr. You know,
just like
those
my
pants,
Nana.
Those pants had fucking pockets.
Hell
Oh
yeah.
shit!
This chick was
Didn't need to
carrying her
carry her-
keys.
Yeah, she had her
everywhere.
keys, baby.
Oh,
That
yeah.
iPhone tucked comfy.
Boom, right in
Tucked
there.
comfy.
When she went home from Bryn Mawr to like visit family, were they like, "Why are you talking like that?" And she's like, "What are you talking about? Well, how am I talking?"
Yeah, unique way of talking. And so this person, I think, will definitely become our Katharine Hepburn more. But I think we saw flashes of it in I'm thinking of ending
Boy, oh boy.
things. Jessie Buckley. I think the parts where she takes control in there, and then she does the "I went to elocution class" when she's talking. I
do have to correct you. You mispronounced Jesse Plemons, but
Yeah.
go ahead.
No, not Jesse. It's the two Jesse.
The guy, right?
Yes?
The guy from
No,
that.
You're
I'm
one.
talking about the guy from Friday Night Lights.
guy.
I'm not.
He
I'm
was
ju-
in
no.
Breaking Bad.
No, not Todd.
He's so good. I love
Game
Jesse
Night.
Plemons.
Remember, he was the cop in
yeah,
Game
no,
Night,
not,
Mike.
not Kirsten Dunst's husband. No.
He was that same guy from Breaking Bad in El Camino, the movie from Breaking
El
Bad.
Camino.
You can tell because in everything he's in, his name is different than Jesse Buckley. Mike, do you understand?
Oh, it's that's who I'm talking about. It's Jessie Buckley. She ruled.
Spends 5 minutes in the car just reciting Pauline Kael in that exact Katharine Hepburn voice. That's a good one, Greg. What do we have for Katharine Hepburn?
Okay, so when I think of Katharine Hepburn, I think of just kicking ass, taking names, filling her pockets with the things that she needs to carry with her throughout the day.
Duke Nukem?
And that reminds me of Charlize Theron, who kind of has this
In general, an incredible parallel.
austere.
Like in terms of career.
Thank you. Austere beauty.
Wow, damn! I've been giving Greg a lot of compliments tonight.
You know what? It works. I think it's a good look for you, and I think it's made this show a little bit better. Greg heads sound off on that in the comments. But yeah, and she's done this cool thing, Charlize Theron, where she's like, all right, I'm an older actress now, so I guess I'm gonna do action movies almost exclusively. And it's you're just taken along with it, and you're like, yeah, this makes sense to me. And I think that if that option had been more available to Katharine Hepburn, but she had that
when
same...
beauty is allowed to be given out to strength.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
Damn.
and also a battle axe.
Yeah, it helps.
Given to beauty. It's cool.
And not just
dope ass
action
Anjo
movies.
chicks.
Yeah.
Not just action movies, but demanding that in the action movie that I'm in, I want a young black actress hired, and I will literally hand her the torch.
This is the torch, everyone. Check it out.
Yes.
It's going to her now.
It's very good.
Good answer, Greg.
Thanks,
Kate,
Ryan.
Katharine Hepburn.
So when I think of Katharine Hepburn,
Is your full name Katharine?
yeah, Katharine
Is your
Ann.
full name Katharine Hepburn?
Catherine Ann Francis as a Catholic,
Hepburn.
Geraci Dellis. Yes,
How many fucking names do you have?
I have a lot of names.
It's such Catholic nonsense.
That's how you know it's such Catholic nonsense. We get to just call nah, I get a couple more.
We're doing a bunch here.
Yeah,
I'm not Catholic, so my name is Rye Ann.
Yeah.
Rye
That's it.
and it's
No last
actually a
name
law
given.
firm. Rye and Haley.
Oh, come on now.
And you know what? That sounds like a Jewish man and an Irishman, and it sounds very canonically correct. That sounds like someone that would be inside of a noir.
Kate, what is your Katharine Hepburn, Jesus Christ?
My Katharine Hepburn, Jesus Christ, is when I think of her, I think of someone who is playing with the idea of power through gender performance. I think of someone who is stoic and near statuesque, and in that sense representative, and simultaneously a person who's incredibly good at showing extreme vulnerability, who can say I am hard and then very quickly crack, and that be the beauty of the character. And so I think Carey Mulligan in Promising Young Woman makes a great Katharine Hepburn this year. I think that she would have done a great job in that role. Would have understood exactly what it was trying to accomplish as a women's college graduate.
If you guys put a gun to my head right now and said, name your 3 favorite actresses, I would say Charlize Theron, Carey Mulligan, and Jessie Buckley. But Mike is taking it down for the Katharine Hepburn.
No, your host. Live in his head for
Right.
15 years.
Using
Kate.
that advanced emotional intelligence.
Yeah, I know. Fuck. That's not emotional intelligence. That's just emotional knowledge. Yeah.
Ouch.
Kate was not going to stand by and let somebody else have a compliment to their emotional intelligence.
No, I'm gonna be honest.
Fuck that.
I can promise you now. I got the best one in here.
I'm the LeBron
ahead,
James
Ryan.
of emotional intelligence. You idiots.
Kate, what does it mean to be a John McClane, and who is the 2020 version of it?
John McClane is punk rock. That's what fucking John McClane is. That's a person who comes in, storms through, doesn't give a fuck about who you think he is. He's going to do what he wants. He's going to be the most superior man in the room. He's going to feel confident in what he has to give, and fundamentally, it's going to be a problem. And in that way, I'm going to say it's Gary Oldman from Mank. I think a similar level of willing to destroy his own life. I think a similar command of the career in which he finds himself, and I think a general punk willingness to kind of be an outsider.
Comes in from the East Coast, gets stuck right away, has to find his way out of a situation
Greg,
using only his wiles.
Yes, exactly.
I will say that Mank has that thing of hey, wife, I don't care about you. You're a stupid bitch.
Exactly.
Wait, why are you going to divorce me? This is unfair.
It's
That's
a
John
man's
McClane.
story, and I think Gary Oldman did a good job in Mank of being a John McClane type in 30s Hollywood.
Gregory, what do we got?
So John McClane is Joe Lunchpail, right? This is not a member of the SWAT team, right? This is just a New York cop. And it turns out on the West Coast, that basically is an action hero, right? In the land of sushi, right? And the
Avocado
405.
toast.
As
Yeah.
far as
Like
action
fruits
heroes
and
go,
nuts.
East Coast 3s or West Coast 10s, baby.
But he finds himself in a situation. He's got to do his best, to find his way out, and he's got to do what he can. And that reminds me of my good friend Ryan, who finds himself through no fault of his own, I'm sure, with a tiny little baby, and has to figure out what do you do, and it has none of the natural skills, but is enough of a Superman to figure it out.
And who's that baby voiced by? John McClane.
Oh no, Alan Rickman.
Okay.
I was
Greg.
thinking Jeff Goldblum.
Throughout the course of our 44-year friendship, what is the actor that I have most often referenced and talked about as my favorite?
Probably Bruce Willis, yeah.
It's probably Bruce Willis.
Really?
How's that?
Oh, yeah.
taste, Greg?
expected.
We have grown up with Bruce Willis back from the Moonlighting days when he was still just a TV star all the way through
My
now.
mom's number one crush.
Back when
yeah.
he was in Gunsmoke.
She liked that
And
he went
Citizen
bald,
Kane?
like my dad.
Yeah, well, you know what it is? It's too much testosterone. So if you see a bald
No,
man,
exactly.
just know
That's-
he's swimming in tea.
That's what my mom has told me since I was probably 9.
Oh, man.
You'll notice
Bald
my
men.
big, full head of hair.
Low T, Greg. Low T.
Oh, no. Alex Jones, sell me pills.
Now, Mike, in order for Greg to make that choice, he didn't use emotional IQ. He used emotional knowledge, which is clearly a step down. Who is your John McClane of 2020?
I do think the description from my esteemed competition, Kate and Greg, they nailed what makes John McClane, but they both forget that John McClane is a physical, primal, somatic being. This is a person who throws their literal weight around to get shit done and uses their knowledge of the area and wiles and improvises. And I think no one more did that this year than Delroy Lindo versus his past versus his friends versus, of course, Ryan was going to give it to Greg because Greg just licked the shit off that boot. But Delroy Lindo obviously would be the actual John McClane.
I got my boots all shiny, and then I went into town.
And
Someone
it
said,
got me embarrassed.
fancy boots.
Gotta put mud on him.
Mike, I want you to explain to us the archetype of Robin Hood, and then who is your go-to? Before you tell us your 2020, is it an actor? Is it a cartoon? Who is the first thing that you think of when you think of Robin Hood?
Oh, before I say like the traits, who was my childhood Robin Hood or who?
Yeah.
It's he doesn't speak with an English accent. He doesn't even try. But god damn it, does it have the best fucking credits of Robin Hood? It's Kevin Costner, Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves.
No.
I agree. I totally agree.
It's got to be the sexual fox.
I didn't come into the sexual fox
He made
until
me
much later in life.
horny.
Yeah.
Okay, but
I got
Mike,
horny because of Kevin Costner. And
now we
others.
know. Now we know that all three of you may have different Robin Hood go-tos.
Yes.
So what is the thing that ties them all together? Like, what do you have to have?
I think Robin Hood is somebody who comes from the system and wants to go and buck and change the system. Right? He was a rich boy, got taken away. He went, wait, let's think about the Poe.
Wow, shocking for you to.
He steals from
Continue
he's
going, Mike.
got
Mike,
a
stay
rebel.
with me. We're on our own show right
he's
now.
charismatic. He's a leader. He is a sex pot no matter what form he's in.
Yes.
And I see you, Taylor Egerton. And I think this year's Robin Hood is then emblemized by John David Washington. Who
Oh,
was
good
AKA
choice.
the protagonist in Tenet. He's also good at throwing projectiles.
Also, you know what's weird is that for some reason I think of him as far as all superheroes go being like one of the shorter ones, like Wolverine height. For
Yeah.
some reason, Robin Hood and
Robin of Locksley's very short, yes.
I do think that John David Washington.
Oh, he's a tiny boy. And it's
he's
adorable.
a little small.
So is
Kate,
Riz
who's
Ahmed.
the Robin Hood of 2020?
Sacha Baron Cohen. He steal from the serious and give to the funny.
And Greg, who was the Robin Hood?
That's not fair. Keith Gill was the main GameStop guy who helped organize everybody to steal money from hedge funds. Give it to the poor folk.
I thought somebody was going to say J.K. Simmons because he hunted down Andy Samberg with a crossbow, which is very similar to Robin Hood.
I almost said
Your-
Serious Simmons.
Your 2020 Marilyn Monroe is still Britney Spears. Your James Dean is Riz Ahmed. Your Katharine Hepburn is Jessie Buckley. Your John McClane is Ryan motherfucking Haley. And your Robin Hood is Sacha Baron Cohen. When we come back, more First Cow. Ladies and gentlemen, I think this is it. This is the moment that we've all been waiting for. What do we think of the relationship between Cookie and King Lou? Does their relationship go past being just friends? And hold up, before you answer. Are such distinctions ultimately immaterial?
Yes. To the second one, can I do that one first? I think it is immaterial. The bond they have, I don't think it matters, both in this day and age or any day and age, how intimate and close and strong they are together. It doesn't matter if they bone. But the energy between them, at any point did I sit up and go, just fuck? Sure. Because it would mean so much to them.
Well, okay, I totally agree. I think the point of the movie is like, I think that we don't have to have these boundaries between types of love, right? And I think that's totally interesting. But I do have like this other question, which is like, people do have to bone. Some people, not everybody, but like sometimes people's got to fuck, right? So I am just kind of wondering, like, where were these folks going to have sex? Because there's not a bunch of ladies around. I don't think there's like a
I
brothel.
think there was an incredibly strong homosexual community. I mean, when has that not been true? When have people been different than they are?
Right.
It's just
Yeah.
a narrative we chose to tell.
Can I bring up ancient Rome? Hello, where nobody ever had homosexual sex.
There is such the difference between like what like quote unquote prison gay, which I bet a lot of the trappers were, versus the way they treat Cookie the whole time. We mentioned like he wears like an off shade of pink, but he has a traditionally woman's role. He cooks. They need it. They're mad when he can't do it, but they are so angry and beat the shit out of him that he doesn't have a mask role. And
It's not just the pink, but also a level of empathy. You know?
yeah, he has
That-
empathy. He cares about the earth.
a sensitivity. Yeah.
But they are so angry
what
at all
it is
times.
an
even when-
awareness of his relation to other people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's fundamentally
Boo.
feminine. Continue, Mike. You're making excellent points.
Oh, my momentum got. I lost the track. I was on a track and I dropped off. It's fine.
But
It's-
I think
you were
that, I think
so right, though. Everything you were saying.
the what the movie underscores though really is that there's this paranoia, and it is a masculine paranoia, that our love, that the way in which men love each other will go past friends, past family, and all the way to the real romance stuff. And I think this story, which is about men but handled in a very with a very feminine energy, I think is about how, like, if we cannot police those attitudes so much and not worry so much, we can find a genuine love for each other that doesn't have to like be so delineated and so like prescribed,
Right.
like so you know, and I think that really is a very like an achingly beautiful message that suffuses this entire movie and not just like the end of it. It's like in every moment of this movie.
Yeah.
But the way that I sort of look at it is that like this is and Kate, I don't know if you've heard this term, but I think that it's a revisionist Western.
Super fans will know.
Kate, do you want to explain what that means?
Yeah, I do. And I think that it starts with the facts that Westerns are not only like a cornerstone of the Hollywood myth, of the global mythology that is Hollywood. It is also a story completely and entirely associated with America. And for that reason alone is fascinating for the tropes it creates, for the expectations, you know, it fulfills. It's also commercially one of the cornerstones of the industry. So Westerns cannot be ignored for what they do and what they mean.
I mean, shit, like, there was a time in American pop culture history where 1 out of every 4 movies and 1 out of every 3 TV shows had cowboys in it.
Like superheroes of its day.
We were all
Superheroes of its
obsessed.
day. Yeah.
And it also ties in directly to like, you know, the frontier being like part of the American
Right.
persona going
Absolutely.
back to like, yeah.
And still, that's the like, what's such bullshit, and still to this day that people are like, I'm free, I'm American, the wild, wild west, you made your own laws and blah, blah, blah. But there's still, unless you were openly queer. And then that's why this is a revisionist history, because the movie is celebrating that versus like a John Wayne movie would never have touched
Yes.
upon, let alone celebrate.
yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, the fact that every once in a while Cookie and King Lou are like, hey, what's up? How are
Yeah.
you?
Westerns,
Checking in.
Westerns
How are you doing? That's revisionist.
Westerns, and I love Westerns. Like, I cannot emphasize enough. My family are Texan. I grew up in Arizona. Like, cowboy culture has been a very.
She's holding a rattlesnake right now. You guys
I'm
can't see
always
it.
well.
wearing a 20-gallon
I have an upper arm tattoo that is literally a cowgirl.
Anytime anybody in Kate's family agrees on something, they pull out 2 6-shooters and just shoot the shit out of the ceiling.
It was something that was noted quite often when we watched Friday Night Lights together, was how convincing Kyle Chandler was, because at the end of conversations he'd go, "All right now," and that's how you knew. That's how you knew he was genuinely Texan.
That's Texan as fuck.
It's Texan as hell, man. How did we get here?
Well, okay, so let me.
I have a
I'll ask
lot
this
to
then.
say. Revisionist Westerns.
Yes.
Or revisionist Westerns. And so Westerns represent pretty much all the pillars of what constitutes America in the imagination. And those are quite often fundamentally problematic. So we have whiteness, we have masculinity, we have heterosexuality.
Big 3?
We have the big 3. And then also on that, like, we have entrepreneurship. We have the notions of like savagery, of the notions of like newness, and all of it. And I think this movie speaks to it. Westerns are exploitative. Mm-hmm. The frontier was inherently, but so are the movies. And so, you know, when we talk about a revisionist Western, what makes this a revisionist Western is that it's telling a story of the West that is not built on those pillars. You know,
Right,
anything
like,
that isn't.
It's a nuanced character study, and in fact, I think that King Lou is like the biggest pillar, like you kept saying, Kate, of it, because he's the guy who was like, "Hey, what's up? I'm down for friendship. I'm a real human. I'm a 3-dimensional person. Also, hello capitalism. Hello, like he has a foot in each boat of being a 3-dimensional person who doesn't have to be one of those hillbillies, but also enticed by it.
And
Something I just thought. Oh, go ahead.
No, you. What did you just think?
I just thought about the fact that there's something we find more based on our conversation when we weren't recording. Something we find more shifty about King Lou because of his I think more confusing identification with the gender binary. I think Cookie's pretty distinctly feminine. I think that King Lou is someone that dances between the two, and I think that makes him inherently less trustworthy in like just our gut. It's another like in between space that he occupies that makes him so interesting.
There's that moment where he says like, you know, he refers to Chief Factor as like being like a woman, and he like looks at Cookie, and there's like a little breakage in that moment, and I think that it's hard. And there is also his push, the entrepreneurial part of him pushes them into destruction, and so I think
it's so masculine, aggressive.
That's a very So I think that's where that comes from.
Poor
too.
Cookie,
and
man.
I think
The whole movie, he's like just trying to be like, yeah, okay, and then he thinks he finds a soulmate, and then he goes, yeah, okay.
I don't read it like that, and I think I don't read it like that because I'm a straight woman. I think that
Explain.
I think that I don't find it inherently tragic to fall into the line of a person who is thinking about like who has more masculine values. I don't think it's inherently evil.
Why I
think that it's balancing.
Why
I don't think Cookie is
is that with the trappers and with the town, he has to definitely hide who he is. He thought he could fully open up with King Lou, and then King Lou was like, look at that girly dude, right? And Cookie's like, fuck.
Yeah. Oh, that's true. That's true. And that's true of queer communities to this day. Like outside of whether or not these guys are queer, that goes back to masculinity as a status that is so fundamental to our society that any diversion from it is a diversion from power and therefore an insecurity.
And I do think it's crazy that Kelly Reichert and the author and whoever did what gave those roles to the person from China. Like you would think that those would be the white person, the Cookie will take over that, and then the Chinese guy will be like, "What do I do? Here we go." But to have him have the a foot in each different role, I think is so much more interesting. Thank you, Kate.
Why that is more nuanced and smart. I still think there's the white privilege that Cookie can get away with it more. I do think King Lou has to put that mask on and drive.
Again, going back to the scene where he is identified the second he reveals his intelligence.
Right.
All right, so let's get to the gay stuff. There's I want to hammer home on this real quick because there is a queer lens that we watch things through, right? Like, or maybe we don't, but is available to watch through, where you look at movies or whatever through a different lens than the mainstream lens. And then there's the straight up thinking that, oh, these two guys were fucking, right? Those are two very different things. And I do feel a backlash coming on of people saying not everything is Brokeback Mountain. Like you can't watch Zack Snyder's Justice League and then just say, gay lens, Superman and Batman were gay.
Well, all the different
Was
theories.
there a butt fucking scene? Because there was one in Brokeback Mountain, and I do think that helped clarify things.
You don't want to know much how I would pay for Henry Cavill to spit in his hand and then go
when
for
you
Ben Affleck.
Baby. Oh, boy.
When you show a character spitting in his hand.
Calm down.
But I do think that what I like, and this is like, I do think the internet oversimplifies everything. What I love about theory, right? If you're going queer theory, feminist theory, is it is a lens. It's a cool, different way to think about it, other than what is just on the page or the screen. But too many people are like, now it's the only way, and cross their arms.
Yeah, that is the beauty of it. These are all questions of perspective, and that is what I think fundamentally a female director brings, especially a female director that is sensual enough to take time. Her showing up on the Oregon frontier in the 1820s, like I think that speaks to what you're saying.
And it speaks to the point of this movie, and so many of the things we've talked about is that men aren't traditionally in America allowed to be intimate. Deep friendship is inherently intimate. Therefore, there's going to be people who watch these two people say friends and just go, no matter what, they're gay. But that is overly simple. Even like that's too woke for broke, and saying no matter what, because I want to see it. But just intimacy and relating to people, we need to be more comfortable with that on every part of the spectrum.
As in many things in life, like the fluidity is the beauty of it.
Yeah.
And is the conversation that's being had contextualized by the frontier as such an extreme space, as such a masculine space, a violent space. Like it isn't. It's rough. And anytime we show stories of tenderness or intimacy, when we are guarded in the way that at least that most people are guarded when they enter very masculine spaces, like, I don't know. I think that that one of the most important things to question in Western movies is is masculinity. And I think that intimacy is deeply tied, if uncomfortably so, to masculinity.
Right. So what I'm trying to do is I'm not trying to have a conversation where we're like, that one time where Cookie looked at King Lou and they looked at each other and then it cut. Oh, they totally fucked. It's a guarantee, and now they're gay for sure. What I'm trying to say is that if you look at this movie through so many lenses, including queer, then you see that what a great argument for being close and tender, and like having how important a best friend is.
Well, the argument is that Cookie and King Lou are the happiest characters throughout this whole movie because they don't have that masculine butch wall up.
Even though they're the ones that are the most scared.
Yeah, they're afraid in the town square, and
that's what it is, right?
But
it's the exhilaration and the fear of intimacy is like,
and I think that's very feminine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then we have the one in between,
bond
which is
that comes from the fear of being vulnerable, creates a community that is hard to mimic.
We didn't get a chance to talk about the kid who got pushed out of the line for an oily cake, and the camera just stayed on his face as he took it so hard.
He took it so hard, and that is the kid who sees stuff and doesn't necessarily say. He's the one who hunts them throughout the rest of the movie, and you can watch the point of the movie in this kid's journey of do I give them up or do I see kindred spirits here?
The last time you see him, he's looking through a window that is the same aspect ratio as the film itself. That's
Yeah, truly good job.
Truly outrageous.
All right, guys, here we go. You know what? Actually, do answer with your name. Let's pretend like this is trivia because we're almost out of time. Which secondary character deserves their own movie?
Greg.
That
guy, that person we were just talking about.
That was a layup, man. He deserves his own movie. Mike and Kate, anybody else?
No.
How about the William guy that is picked on by nerd in the beginning?
You're right. The guy who has brain damage and a baby.
Yeah.
Oh,
the guy who plays the music that everyone hates. That's
also, what about that baby? Can we do a Look Who's Talking thing with that baby?
Yeah, the baby itself.
Sorry.
How would you guys distract a rich man from noticing that the other three of us are stealing milk?
Tit flash, Kate. Tit flash.
Kate.
Oh, that's such a good one. Ryan, I'm also going to go with tit flash because I actually have not a bad set myself.
I'd say explain why estate taxes are bad.
Oh, shit. That's so good. That's double
Mike.
taxation.
I bet he can't.
Holy crap. That's such a good
Shit, man. That was funny.
That's the tit flash for men.
So Mike goes with tax flash. Does this movie tell us that creature comforts are divine, wicked, or in between?
Greg. God, it's always in between, isn't it? But
God isn't everything.
You can find the beauty in one of these oily cakes, but there really was something so disturbing about watching them push each other out of the way and put more silver on the line and everything. And so it's not just that it's a mix of those two things; it's that line is breachable and it's a constant thing where it's it is so hard to become in harmony with the things that give us pleasure. Really.
I think everybody deserves happiness, but then when I watch those guys eat them, I was like, you guys don't deserve happiness. Fuck you.
Mike, it's the difference between heaven and hell is they all only have pool cues to eat, but in hell, they're starving, but in heaven, they've learned how to feed each other, right?
Mike.
Yeah.
Aw.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I didn't make it up.
How long are you saying God did?
God did.
That's what God wanted.
These sick fucking plays.
Say it, brother.
Is that what Tony Stark said? That's how God did it. And that's how we're going to do it. How long would it take you guys to down a gallon of whole milk? Hold up. You're not allowed to throw up.
I got an answer.
Kate?
9 hours.
9 hours.
Mike.
I got a sensey tummy.
Kate. I do think that 8 hours would be ridiculous and 10 hours would be ridiculous. I really do think that's the perfect answer.
I think I nailed it. I thought about it.
Yeah.
I could do it in 20 minutes. I wouldn't throw up, but because I have the tummy
Bullshit.
I do,
You would literally throw up.
I would throw up.
You would absolutely throw up.
Out of my butt.
Shame.
Oh, yeah. Mike's severe intolerance would make it go right out of his butt.
I'm so tired of your intolerance, Mike.
I hate lactose.
Lactose is here.
I can only take one answer for this one.
Greg,
you're out.
Oh.
How good them oily cakes look?
Mike.
Ooh, Kate.
Mike.
So have you ever been to a county fair and you see funnel cakes? Oh my God, they look so goddamn good.
Honey, you
Honestly,
ever
I
see
thought they
fry
looked like
cake?
turds. I
Well,
thought they
they're-
looked like turds.
Here's my thing with Westerns is even if they look good, they're being touched by the dirtiest fucking
Yeah.
worm hands, you know?
But he puts
God,
the
they were
honeycomb, he
filthy.
puts the cinnamon. Oh.
Cinnamon.
That
he's
cinnamon,
doing the-
though.
When he's doing
well-
the whisking, he uses just a bunch of sticks.
I'm sorry,
We
you
were
just had
talking
about
Damn.
Risk from Martha
Wasn't
Stewart.
that like? Wasn't that a moment of like, wow, there really are only 7 machines?
Yeah. He used a pulley to get that milk.
Wow, man, I couldn't make a mousetrap car.
When we were talking about Kelly Reichardt's tenderness, the cinnamon. We should have brought up the cinnamon.
Oh,
It's
the
just
cinnamon.
so gently put on
Actually,
there.
every actor we've talked about is a cinnamon.
What would you name that cow?
Greg,
Kate.
Greg?
I would have called her Iris because of her pretty eyes.
Wrong.
Mike.
Mike?
Cuddles, because she's just so goddamn
Wrong.
cuddleable.
Kate.
Kate.
Zucchini. Produce is hilarious.
I like that.
Wrong.
No, that's good.
Her name is Firsty. Firsty cow.
First
When she
she
came on
cow.
screen, I was like, oh shit, that is the first cow.
That's the first cow, dude. She
Nah,
looks so healthy.
she felt important and beautiful.
she
And by the
knew it.
way, people who have not seen this movie, and it's insane that you're still listening to this podcast if you have not seen that
What's
movie,
wrong
but
with you?
But then again, it's not like I haven't been in that position.
it's a full-on hour before first cow comes on the screen.
Yeah.
When we come back, awards.
Awards.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've already found out that the Academy Awards, or as I call them, no big deal, the Oscars, have decided to give First Cow 0 awards. Because, and we can tell that because they got 0 nominations. But what
No
we're going to do right now
nom-noms.
is we're going to give them 6
Sing it, brother.
motherfucking awards right now.
Boom.
Chakalaka.
Eat
Greg,
it.
we're going to start with Best Nature.
Yes. Now, this is a movie that understands nature. One thing that I really like that it does is put a bunch of nature in the very foreground. That's so cool. You know, like have like some reeds in the very foreground of the shot,
Like
and then you have
Botticelli.
like action in the middle. It gives a lot of depth.
Like a Fantastic Four cover.
I'm just remembering what you said, Ryan. The mushroom harvesting. That first cut to the mushrooms. I'm not even much of a mushroom guy, but it was so beautiful and I don't know, like supple.
It's a striking
Oh.
moment. I think it's something that stands out in the movie.
yeah,
The crack.
Well, it's the
Mushrooms
moment
are right.
between
Yeah.
one time and the next,
yeah, for
which
sure.
is first. You know, that's the first thing.
Mushrooms are a crazy, gorgeous plant that is fascinating and looks like makes
Built
me believe
on
in
death.
God. It
I
just
know
it tastes like foot shit.
Tastes like foot shit and built on death.
You're eating the wrong one.
Mushrooms are
I'm
like
sorry.
so.
Someone talk
important.
about myself,
Oh Jesus! All right, Mike.
Do you taste like foot shit?
dude. Only time will tell.
Mike, Best Nature.
Cookie has been in and out of consciousness for a couple days, and he wakes up and he runs away from the nice people who helped him, and he sees the river. And that shot of the way the river is turning and that the woods are there and the sun is there, god damn if that ain't nature.
I said, goddamn, Kate beat that. Oh, and by the way, and this is apropos of nothing, I forgot to mention that if you pick what I think should be the award,
Yeah.
then you get double points.
Oh, good to know. Don't give a frig. So sorry, Ryan.
No, I know.
Thank you.
You're a
next.
classic punk rocker.
Yeah.
Like Mank.
So I think the best nature was the one that covered the bones. And that is because I think that it symbolizes the whole idea of context, which is like super important to this film. It is about time. It's about cover, and it's about something that is incredibly natural and absorbs all. So to me, it very much is like the story of humanity is all that dirt that cover them bones.
And anytime Loam can get a shout out.
Yeah, dude. Shout out to Loam.
Oh, I
Shout out
got
to
double?
Loam. Yeah, that sucks,
Yeah.
dude.
It's that river shot. Kate,
Yeah.
tenderest moment.
Yeah. Tenderest moment, I think, is very obviously the moment where you know it's all okay. And that he knows it's all okay, that they know it's all okay for each other. And it's when, at the very end, when King Lu looks at the bag of money and puts it down and says, "It's okay, I have you." And they fall asleep in exactly the position where Aaliyah Shawkat finds them hundreds of years later. that's when the question of, and I think, wow, in this moment, I'm realizing, like, I think that is the question of, like, love and intimacy and tenderness of the human experience to begin with, which is, like, it is constantly a question. Do you
We didn't talk about this a lot.
trust?
Yeah, we didn't talk about this a lot, and spoilers, but I think that King Lu could have moved on, right? Like,
Oh,
Cookie
absolutely.
was going to die. And
Several times he could have
Yeah.
left the vulnerable Cookie behind, and never once did he. But the threat was constantly there, and I think that speaks to intimacy, which I think this movie is about, and it's that you can never feel totally safe that other person, completely has your back in some ways. At least in my experience, like you definitely have. It's brave to trust people. It's brave.
And then
I
when
think that
Aaliyah
shows it.
Shawkat dug them up and she was like, marry me.
Mhm.
It was good. Mike, what's the tenderest moment?
I mean, Kate's was pretty tender, I guess. But I think more is when Cookie is milking the cow for the first time and apologizes to her for losing her husband and her calf.
Oh, yeah.
I cannot count the amount of times I almost burst into tears, but
sweet
that was
one.
definitely one of them.
Amen.
I think it's so sweet the way he says husband too.
I
because
know.
Yeah, they
I
got
think that's-
married.
What it is it legitimizes and humanizes that relationship and says, I see it as real to you.
And that's what he
Right.
wants, right? He wants a husband. Like he,
Oh,
he sees him-
yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
cry right now.
Damn, this
It's a
movie is
beautiful
so
I
thing.
swear to
sweet.
fucking God.
Sorry,
so
you
I,
talked to three bitches, Ryan.
those are both good, those very tender moments. So I'll just throw out another one which I really like, which is the moment when Cookie and King Lu go back to King Lu's place, and they kind of like each start. They just like get domestic right away. King Lu goes out and starts
Yeah.
chopping wood.
The dream.
And Cookie
Let's get
starts like
domestic.
cleaning up, which that's exactly what my wife and I would do. She'd run out and go start chopping wood, and I'd start cleaning up around the house. But
She'd be better than King Lu was, though.
after,
It took him
It's about
forever.
he had a
balance,
hatchet.
baby. It's
He had a
always
very
about
small
balance.
axe. He had a very small axe.
No, that's a different set of movies.
But then when Cookie sits down after that, there's this moment as he sits down where you see him like completely relax, and you realize you actually haven't seen the character completely relaxed until this one moment, and he's finally like real and the most fully himself that you've ever seen. And it's a great feat of acting because you see it happen in the audience, and you see it happen the very instant it does, and it's like just a wave came over me when I saw that, because it's like, wow, they're really together now. They're
Yeah.
like, this is like this is intimacy. This is what intimacy is. They're
Which speaks
actually
to that
present with each other.
performer's like ability is that with a breath he's able to say, I'm safe now,
Yeah.
and I'm with someone else. Like that's an insane talent.
We had the Oscar draft segment on this show. Fuck the Oscars, man. Like,
Yeah.
Damn.
how these two guys weren't nominated either for Best Actor or Best Supporting. But yeah, Greg, like King Lu the whole time is like, he's the most ambitious and he's going, but he's also the one that's like, to Cookie, relax, bud, relax. And then to watch Cookie do it.
Yeah.
I'm going to give it to Mike, though. It wasn't my pick, but it's
Such a beautiful
Milky Cow.
yin-yang. It's a beautiful yin-yang story.
I gotta tell you
outside
guys,
of gender.
I probably got that award because not only am I right, but Ryan and I have shared the hug between King Lu and Cookie so many times in life.
Oh, yeah.
And I'll tell you guys this. That is the last point that I will give Mike, because I don't want any more of those speeches.
Yeah.
Greg,
Silence.
Yes.
biggest oh shit
You
moment.
gender traitor.
Biggest issue. Okay. There's a part where Cookie's recovering from his head injury, and it's really bad. And like, as the audience, you're like, how bad is this head injury? Seems like a really bad one. But he tries to move on. At one point, he gets up, he walks out of this like shack that he's in, and there's just like, you think you see one wolf, and as you see the one wolf, you're like, oh wait, there's two. And then as you see two, you realize I'm looking at like 8 wolves right now. And
Again,
Cookie's just like,
welcome to capitalism.
yeah. And Cookie's like, you know what? I'm just going to go back to sleep. But that moment where you suddenly realize that you have been looking at wolves and not realizing it, I thought was like, I literally said, oh shit.
But ultimately,
Well,
assholes.
probably
I
I
don't-
said, oh dear. Because
I don't know how you're living your life, but
Beautiful
the
gentle.
response to everything should be, oh, I'll just go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Mike, oh shit moment.
It's when Toby Chief Factor is eating the oily cake and talking about Kensington. The whole time I was just like, oh shit. Which is the same face King Lu was making.
And he
Like,
names
Jesus.
every ingredient except for milk.
Yeah.
That guy's
Yeah.
so dumb.
A hint of cinnamon from this branch.
Kate, oh shit moment.
When the cow no cookie.
I'm sorry?
When the cow no cookie.
When the cow no cookie.
When the cow.
When the cow no cookie. At the
When they're all standing around the cow.
Yeah, exactly.
And the
I
cow's
don't
like,
know why I'm helping. Kate, take
Thank
it.
The
you,
cow's
Mike,
like, I know
for
this guy.
fundamentally understanding me. I'm saying the moment when they're all surrounding the cow and Chief Factor is talking about how little milk it yields, and we see the tenderness, like the obvious intimacy between the cow and Cookie, and we see the visiting general or whatever he is, like saying, like noticing, clocking. He clocks it.
Yeah.
And that is the scariest moment, because there is nothing scarier than someone that you don't feel safe with clocking your vulnerability or clocking
these weird
your intimacy.
frenemies that we didn't even get to talk about. These two guys who have so much erotic energy in their hate
talk
of
about
each
it.
other.
Yeah, truly. Yeah.
Great
Hatred
job,
is
guys,
incredibly
but
erotic.
I will award no points. The oh shit moment is where the cow is on the boat and then it's on the land and then first cow. So
Big Mo.
that's for me. Kate.
Yeah.
In a Kelly Reichardt movie, cringiest moment.
Oh, I think it's the moment when, after they are semi-discovered as stealing the milk and have to go on the run and are separated, I think we are led to believe, when he's like at the canoe, that he abandons Cookie.
Yeah.
And I think that any moment, but especially that one, which like instinctively we as like Aristotelian viewers of 3 acts believe like this should be like when this happens, and we already know the big thing of them getting caught has. I think having King Lu be in a position in which he can leave, like every time, that is powerful. The reassertion, because Cookie, I don't think, is ever the character we think is going to bail. King Lu, as the more mask of the two, is the one that we're worried will abandon intimacy.
Especially when you think the whole movie is about, okay, fine, movie, be slow. I get it. I'm still going to watch you. So it's at least about these two guys.
Yeah.
And then you're like, no, wait. No, I already invested in these two guys. That can't happen.
Pick one. I choose Mom.
Greg, what do you think? Cringiest moment.
Cringiest moment. So the movie's pretty good on this score, except for I feel like Native Americans are present but not integrated in the same way that everybody else is, and so I don't want to venture a guess as the reason why, but there's almost an ornamental quality to them, and it's like I feel like we're inside everybody's head and we know what everybody's up to, and they talk about what they're into, and then there's just these people who we can't understand and everything, and so it felt a little uncomfortable.
Generously, it's her saying these are outsiders. But I think that saying in a Western, these are outsiders, isn't groundbreaking and isn't giving anyone an opportunity.
And she's trying to make a movie from the perspective of King Lu and Cookie, and they probably also thought those same things. But
I think it's hard to encompass everybody. And I also agree that I think Gary Farmer, or I said disagree. I think Gary Farmer, who played Tadalicum, who was the Native American in Chief Factor's house, his reaction stuff the whole time, he understands more than the whiteys think he does.
Yeah.
And I do think we know
his
what he and his wife are thinking.
Steps ahead of what the white man is asking him, and they assume that means stupidity. Again, because some people can never imagine being stolen from.
including when Cookie and King Lu say, "Beaver, I don't want to eat beaver," and he's like, "Yeah, I know you guys don't."
Joke's on you. Beaver
whole
rules.
Beaver
And deep
does
down,
rule.
you know.
Mike, cringiest moment, and you can include the thing I just said.
The moment
up
I
there.
cringed the most is when I realized I laughed at Ryan's eating beaver joke. But in the movie, this is my personal, is when Cookie thinks he's gotten away, slips in mud. The thunk of his head meeting that rock made me visibly react.
No.
It is such a rough sound. As somebody who's clumsy and has hit his head on a lot of things, I did not like hearing that.
Yeah, it was horrifying, but not totally in the tone of the award. So that's going to Kate. Director's signature move, Greg. Kelly Reichardt directed the fuck out of this movie. What did she do the best?
For me, the like most baller move of the entire movie is that opening shot of the boat very slowly moving across the.
That's
the
putting
frame.
your goddamn nuts on the table.
Because and honestly,
It's true.
it's not.
Which
just
is
like
why
a-
I thought it was a masculine director at the very beginning of the movie. I was like, only a man would assert this level of, quote, indulgence.
Yeah,
She went out and got truck nuts and put those on the table.
I feel and so she's engaging with that head on. She is setting the pace for what the movie is, and I think honestly, by the time you get to the end of that, you don't have an adversarial relationship with the movie anymore. You're like, okay, I get it. I think I'm ready for this, and it like reprograms you in one very quick shot. Really, ultimately, it is a quick shot. It reprograms you and gets you ready for the what the rest of the experience is going to be.
And she didn't know this at the time, but what it became was, this movie, most people are going to watch streaming. And I wanted this to be in theaters, but pandemic and whatnot. And so they're all going to
That's
come
on
to
her.
this. That's on her.
Yeah.
Kelly Reichardt, why'd you start the pandemic?
A man
But,
would know to think ahead.
Mm-hmm.
But they're going to come off binging TV shows. And so I do, like we've talked about before in this episode, I do think it's like you might not belong here.
Yeah,
Mike,
Move along.
director's signature move.
I'm going to start broad and then narrow down to the specific moment I mean. I'm going to say the edges. Having with Night Moves and now with this one, I think she's so good at the edges of scenes where other people would cut off. And I think this is particularly important to talk about this week. We're recording Zack Snyder's Justice League came out. There's no edge of his scenes because his scenes just keep going forever. But Kelly Reichardt, her scenes, so many times you think they will end and they linger on somebody. And then at first you're like, dumb, cut. And then later she's telling the story of a place. And the specific moment I'm talking about that'll, if I have to pick up a response is
You do,
the
Mike.
wives. Todd,
It's our
okay.
job right now.
You have to play
Chief
by the
Factor's
rules.
wife and Todd Allicom's wife, all the men leave, and then the wives sit down and just start talking and actually talk about the things they care about.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, she's telling the story of a whole entire place just through the eyes of two people, but everybody has their own First Cow movie right now.
Yeah, I mean, in the speed round, we talked about what side character do you want a movie most by, and we've sort of been talking about side characters the entire night. Like, and it's not because she ever puts the spotlight on them; it's just that she doesn't remove the spotlight from them.
Right.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
It's very impressive. Kate, director signature move.
I think it's a scene that has been brought up a couple times, and it's because it's like a very big seam within the narrative itself, and I think it's the cut from the Aaliyah Shawkat scene to the mushrooms. I think that it's very slow, which is very Reichardt. I think it's very exploratory, which I think is very Reichardt. And I think that it is emphasizing a lot of themes that she's, to me, like very clearly laying out, which is like time, because time is what it takes to grow life from death, which is what fungus is. And there is something incredibly like feminine, obviously, to foraging, and the slowness with which you watch Cookie. You know, he's not violent in his hand movements at all. And I think it eases you into the world as Cookie sees it. And then when you see or interact, and the way that Cookie sees it is very much in tune with nature as a very feminine perspective. So when you see him then interact with like the band of hooligans who are so aggressive and vulgar immediately, like just a simple long shot of someone's hand picking up mushrooms, I think, conveys an entire film's tone.
Without the Law and Order, dum-dum, here is here's the time that we were in, here's the time that we're in now.
Mm-hmm.
I do think it's confusing and it's frustrating and purposeful, and I loved it the second time, and I wasn't exactly sure. Like, you know, in that Greta Gerwig Little Women style, like, I think I know what the timeline is, but I'm not totally sure. And I have two options. I can either enjoy it or it can make me angry. I think that's what she does with this. And so, yeah, I'm going to give that to Kate. Last award, we're going to Kate. It's pound for pound performance.
Oh, I think it's so Ryan Lee. And I feel like I kind of steal that answer. I think he's very obviously the one who kind of carries us because he's asked the most. Cookie, what's his name? John
Magaro?
The Italian, who I think is
John Magaro.
John Magaro.
She's allowed to make that noise. Nobody else
no
is,
one
'cause
else.
she's Italian.
I am the ethnic of the group, and no, I think that Orion Lee is like we've talked about before, asked to traverse, like he's like the manifestation of intersectionality, navigating capitalism, which is
I think
most
that what we talked
American story. And he does such a good job at being constantly, you both want to trust him and you don't, and he both seems protective like the patriarchy and like scary. I think he represents a lot.
That is awesome about the movie, is that it does walk you along the line of why don't you want to trust him, and what does that say about you? Mm-hmm. Fucking racist. I think the movie gives him less to do than Jean Majara, but that doesn't mean that the performance, the actor still might do more. Mike, where are we going?
Yeah, I hate to agree with Kate. I'm going to put that down. I do think it's Orion Lee. It's the moment I want to drill into to and I think he does this throughout the film, but is when Toby Chief Factor is eating that cake, the things Orion Lee does of concern, worry, and this goes over Cookie's head. Cookie's not, when Toby Chief Factors talk about Kensington and all the ingredients, Cookie's just like, hell yeah, I made a good oily cake. And Orion Lee's like, oh fuck, oh wait, what could we get out of them? And it's all blending together. And then at Pop Filter, all we ever want is two things at once.
Exactly. And I think that Orion in that moment does something that is beautiful in terms of like the yin and yang of the two, which is, like one of the beautiful things that, quote, masculinity at the more masculine end of the spectrum, which I think he, represents throughout the film, is the instinct and ability to provide safety or awareness, even if we're not saying like the mask people in the world, the aware, like that is the...
Well, we are.
You are, and that is the we are, and that's the connotation. And so I think moments in which you see Orion's instinct to protect Cookie are moments of seeing the beauty of what masculinity brings to the table. What it is that those men are bringing, which is hope to the frontier. There is beauty in what it is to be a man, and I think that Orion does that really nicely.
Thank you.
Yeah, you guys are welcome.
Hope via biceps.
Greg, what do you think? What is the pound for pound best performance?
I guess for me, it's going to be John Magaro, and I think probably I identified maybe more with him, but I feel like so often you can see on his face exactly what he's going through, even though that is such an emotional, he's got such a deep emotional landscape. But, he is the character is someone who is very safe, but then in loves somebody who is a lot less safe than they are. And, if you love someone who's dynamic, it can be scary. And I think he did a really good job of portraying that. And so for me, it was him.
Aww.
If I can jump on Greg's bandwagon, I want to say, like, I've seen this kid in a few things, and John Magaro as Tibbet in Overlord, which is a dope, weird Nazi monster movie, and then as the bad guy in season 1 of Umbrella Academy. I don't think his range was shown in those projects, and he's going places. He's very good, and I understand why Ryan insulted and spat in mine and Kate's face right there.
Yeah, sorry about that, but that's a clear answer. Sorry. He was given the least to do, actually, even though he had the most screen time, the least to do, and I thought killed it. Last segment, guys, before we get to who won the show is recommendations. I'm going to go first. Ryan. If you...
Get the point for going first?
For it.
Yeah. The movie that this reminded me of the most was McCabe and Mrs. Miller, and this is a movie.
Of course, yeah, that is what this is.
Mike, did you have that as well?
An Altman film.
Well.
Yeah, that was on my list as well.
Okay, Mike, why don't we alternate words on
All right,
explaining this?
You go first.
The reason why this movie reminded me of it so much is that it's very clear. It's not that people in the West were dopes or clowns that always tripped on things, but they actually did have to go through some shit. They had to go through some self-reflection and some am I doing the right thing? Like, is this the best way to handle women and Native Americans? I don't know.
Yeah.
It seems like what I'm doing is weird. Instead of just making a movie that's like, here's what we do. We punch a bitch and kick an Indian.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is so obviously Ang Lee by way of Altman and blending those
Mike,
things.
that
And
is
it's
true.
McCabe. Thank you, Kate. Yeah, anytime we make poetry noises at each other, Ryan, I'll give them support. Everybody thinks ultimate freedom of the Wild Wild West Chicken-cha is you can do whatever you want, but what it means is you have to look in that mirror and make those hard decisions, and watching them go through that. And then the Altman style of, there's a few scenes in here where 8 characters are talking over each other. And
Podcast vibes.
I'm like, what?
Robert Altman is
Altman
the
is the
inventor
original
of
podcaster.
podcasting, for sure.
And there's those vibes of like, oh, you want me to get the vibe of how chaotic even the simpler times were.
But like, what strikes me about this movie, and because it is somebody who doesn't give a fuck about like the Western man with First Cow, and then also with McCabe and Mrs. Miller, is even in Unforgiven, which I think is sort of like the go-to
The classic revisionist Western.
Like Clint Eastwood at some points thinks about things. He's like, should I? I will. And then does it. Whereas there's a scene in McCabe and Mrs. Miller where Warren Beatty like walks out of a bar and it's snowy outside, and he just trips and eats shit for like 8 minutes. You know?
Yeah,
Like,
it's a long,
I think
awesome
the
scene.
cinematic vocabulary is verisimilitude. There is a reality
'Cause we all trip.
to Reichardt's depiction that like feels very Altman-esque. Again, someone
you don't
comfortable
always
playing
get
with
to look
time.
cool. Right.
You don't look cool. You don't look cool in real time. No one ever has.
Yeah, there's no
Two
slow motion
things.
walk.
Can I change my Katharine Hepburn to Kate based on just how she said verisimilitude?
Thank you.
And then if I was not going to do another movie, Mrs. Miller's Secret is a song by the band Silent Comedy that captures the essence of that song very well. He's going to give points to you guys. He hates the Silent Comedy and hates when I bring them up.
All right. So, Mike, that was yours. Kate, was that yours?
No.
What is yours?
Mine is one of my favorite love stories between men, because I really do love when those relationships are explored with tenderness. I hated The Lighthouse because I think that's how a man would navigate intimacy between other men, in which there requires violence, it requires a lot of bullshit that I'm not looking for.
Requires
What I'm looking
lighthouses?
for is it requires lighthouses, it requires mermaid vagina. It requires literally drinking gasoline. So my choice is very much rooted in a story. I've probably watched this movie over 10 times. I Think I Love You, Man is one of the better sweet stories out there. I think Paul Rudd and Jason Segel are playing the best versions of themselves. I think they're being very sincere. I think they're playing to their strengths and to their own senses of humor. And throughout all of it, it's so silly. And that's like the coolest thing about masculine relationships, is that the bond is one in which like it is very, very often when they're close, very silly and sweet in that way. And it's like the one space in which they feel safe to be silly. And that's
I think that I Love You, Man is like it's a movie about two guys who are trying to be friends, but I also think that it's about two actors who are trying to learn how to act, and it's just it's the two of them like trying to break down walls of being, both of them, like Paul and Jason, being like, I don't know, man, this is stupid, right? Should
what
we do
that
it?
is men learning how to be sincere. So I think that those performers were doing a very, very good job of like learning how to be themselves while creating a relationship. You know, it's a sweet movie.
Kate,
I love that you brought up silly, Kate, because I think silliness is so vulnerable. Because it's either you're making the person laugh or they're about to hit you right in the temple.
Funniness is
when
cerebral.
you're silly.
Silliness is personality. And like to buy into like, this is what I see as silly is like scary.
Yes, the voice you do.
I know
Very
voices
brave.
are very silly, and that's one thing when you know you're close to people is when you.
Kate,
can
I
do
think
the
this is going to be a
voice.
hard one for you to win because Mike literally picked the thing that I picked. But let's go to Greg to see what he came up with.
For what my suggestion, this movie is about a lot of things, but I think kind of at the core, it's about how the West was won. And I think that that's an important question. But
Wait, is it the Olsen film, How the West Was Fun?
Ryan, that's yes, that's the joke. I was going to say the Olsen film, How the West Was Fun. I was clearly building a pathway to that.
Fuck Ryan as a host, am I right?
Greg. I'm sorry, Greg.
How was the West fun? You'll have to watch the movie to figure it out. But it was fun in a lot of ways that I think this movie also celebrates.
I feel
That's
terrible.
it, Ryan. I'm done talking.
Now.
Here's another Greg point.
Because there's 2 Olsen twins, there's 2 Greg.
Mike takes it down. Greg, I swear to God, I thought that there was no way that would be it. I'm going to give you another point. When we come back, we're going to find out who is the winner of this episode.
Tastes like foot shit and built on death.
And that is First Cow. Guys, how do we think that First Cow is going to do? I really do. It's one of my favorite movies of all time.
It's. I know I said this last week, but this might be the movie to take it all down.
Yeah, I think it's got so much for specifically us, and then it just feels a lot. It feels nice the entire time. It's a nice movie for nice people, and I think that's going to help.
My father, a nice story about nice people doing nice things.
Yes,
exactly right.
It's
and
the
isn't
most
that
beautiful
what
kind of movie?
Buy
if
cookies
you can have
for cookies.
If you can have a deeply profound movie that speaks to the human experience, and then also both of the main characters in it are such big sweeties, if I see these actors, I'm going to hug them in a post-COVID world.
To me, the archetype of that story is Little Miss Sunshine. That's the story of a bunch of people who are fundamentally sweeties.
Yeah.
Greg Kinnear counts for you as a sweetie.
Oh, yeah, there's a sweetie in there. I mean, if you haven't seen it, then that's on you.
There's an
I've
edge,
seen
too, but it's an edge around sweetiness.
I'm glad.
Kate, would you have liked this movie better if Greg Kinnear played the voice of the cow and responded back to Cookie?
I was like very weird about her weight, his weight. Yeah. He's constantly projecting fears of loserdom on the rest of the. He
Hey,
actually
girl,
wouldn't
are
be
you trying to
bad.
cheer yourself up about your kid dying by eating extra grass or something? I'm just asking. I want to make sure you're staying healthy.
I'm a little nervous about this movie because Greg is clearly the cookie, and Kate is clearly the King Lou. Mike is obviously the cow, and I'm the guy with the mouth harp. And I think that I get screwed in that.
Or what? Wouldn't you be the Scottish guy?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
you're the dude from Train Spotting for sure, you asshole.
the guy who just has a head that head should not be shaped like that. That's probably me for sure.
I love you. Finally gotten head to beard ratio down, and I'm proud of you.
Coming into last place tonight is Ryan, 15 points,
That's huge for a host.
which is almost halfway to the winner tonight.
Yeah, that's a good score.
Kate, you won last week
Yeah.
and then fell asleep. You got 26 points.
Oh,
I believe in absolutely everything I said.
I guess you're less of a cow and more of a promising young woman, and that's why you won.
Yeah,
last
and that's
week,
what
not
we're
this
finding
week.
out in this moment.
If you're looking for your laurels, I believe that you're resting on them.
Oh, you burnt.
Boom. Boom.
Like
I
one
think
of
that
those
we
little,
all know how
donuts
this goes.
that you sit on after surgery.
I think that we all know how this goes. Greg
After
picked
you neuter me.
First Cow in the Oscar draft to get nominations. It got
I
0.
did. Yeah.
But Mike got 29 points, 3 points over Kate. Greg got 36 points and
Shit.
won the whole fucking show.
Boom.
That's
Let's
fair.
give it up for our not traditionally masculine boys
Cookie,
who grow
cookie,
big beards
cookie.
to hide behind so that nobody can ever hurt them.
I'm more of a
Boom.
Trapper Dan, so
On the Oscar draft show, we talked about vote splitting. You know, like, is that a real thing? Do you guys think with the Best Actor or Moody Award, do you guys think that these two will split the vote? Should we go like one of them being supporting? How do we do these two performances?
they're co-leads in my
They're
book.
co-lead vocals, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah,
So-
I don't think that Cookie carried it more than King Lou at all. And I think that you kind of implied that, Ryan, and I think that this movie is pillared on the Orion Lee performance more so than the John Italian name.
John
Are you saying-
Machado.
Are you saying Orion? Orion.
Orion.
Lee, you're wrong.
Orion. You clearly, yeah.
That
I
is
agree with
this.
Kate.
Now that Mike has said that, that is this week's episode of Movie of the Year. We have so many other 2020 movies ahead in store for you guys. I don't even know how to tell you what is next. There's going to be so much flying Fast and Furious at you that none of them will be an actual Fast and Furious movie.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, sorry.
That comes out 2021, baby. June. Fast 9.
I do want to thank Kate. I want to thank Greg. I want to thank Mike.
You're welcome.
That one, you choked on my name a little, buddy. I don't know if
I want to
that's
thank
hard for you.
Mike and Kate last because, Greg, you are my best friend. Until next week. And until next week, keep watching those movies.
Tastes like foot shit and built on death.